Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. Right here in the live studios in the Haven, Hythe, southeast England, just next to the English Channel. Sri Caitanya Mahäprabhu he genuine love for Krishna everywhere, to everyone. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very attached to Sri Caitanya-caritämrta, as was our dear Srila Prabhupada. And to glorify the Caitanya-caritämrta, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Maharaj Prabhupada, said this. You can find this, by the way, in Bhakti Prakash Swami's Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhava 2.112 or 2.12. In due course, Mahapralaya, devastating floods, will inundate the entire universe. If you attempt to survive by swimming in that deluge, then do not neglect to take hold of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. Or if you cannot hold all three, then release Bhagavad Gita. If necessary, you may also relinquish Srimad Bhagavatam, but under no circumstances release your hold on Sri Caitanya-caritämrta, for if this one book remains, then the flood can do no actual damage, because after it has subsided, the message of Shastra can be revived from Sri Caitanya-caritämrta alone, it being the essence of all Shastra. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda. So we've reached the 218th verse of chapter 17 of the Ädi-lilä, the last chapter of the Ädi-lilä. Sri Caitanya Mahäprabhu, as we remember from yesterday, had this very intense discussion with the Qazi after going to his home with hundreds of thousands of devotees chanting Hare Krishna. Quite an intense emotional scene. They had a discussion based on scripture, and finally the Qazi surrendered to Caitanya Mahaprabhu and revealed that after he went to break the Mridanga in one of the parties and sent his men out to do the same, he had a dream that very night. A very fierce personality with the head of a lion and body of a human being came in his dream and sat on his chest, and he said, "Because you have broken the Mridanga, I'm going to kill you." And he was so terrified. He said, "But you did not do anything very serious. You didn't stop it. But if you do it again, I will kill you. And also all your family members." So then finally, Lord Chaitanya touched him after he had revealed this to the Lord and the Lord's intimate associates, that it had been Lord Nishingadev that had, actually changed his mind. And he was saying the name Krishna, explaining how everyone is now chanting Hare Krishna, and how the Muslims came to him and complained, and then finally the Brahmins, local Brahmins, came to complain. And so now that's where we pick up the dialogue for today. Lord Chaitanya is talking to the Kazi, Chand Kazi. Because you have chanted 3 holy names of the Lord, Hari, Krishna, and Narayana, you are undoubtedly the most fortunate and pious. Purport. Here, the Supreme Lord, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, confirms that anyone who chants the holy names, Hari, Krishna, and Narayana, without offense, is certainly extremely fortunate. And whether Indian or non-Indian, Hindu or non-Hindu, he immediately comes to the level of the most pious personality. We therefore do not care about the statements of Pashandis who protest against our movements, making the members of other cities or countries into Vaishnavas. We have to follow in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, executing our mission peacefully, or, if necessary, kicking the heads of such protesters. Prabhupada. Text 219. After the Kazi heard this, tears flowed from his eyes. He immediately touched the lotus feet of the Lord and spoke the following sweet words. Text 220. Only by your mercy have my bad intentions vanished. Kindly favor me so that my devotion may always be fixed upon you. 221. The Lord said, I wish to beg you for one favor in charity. You must pledge that this Sankirtan movement will not be checked, at least in the district of Nadia. Text 222. The Kazi said, to as many descendants as take birth in my dynasty in the future, I give this grave admonition. No one should check the Sankirtan movement. Purport. As a result of this grave injunction by the Kazi, even at present, the descendants of the Kazi family do not oppose the Sankirtan movement under any circumstances. Even during the great Hindu-Muslim riots in neighboring places, the descendants of the Kazi honestly preserved the assurance given by their forefather. Text 223. Hearing this, the Lord got up, chanting Hari, Hari. Following him, all the other Vaishnavas also got up, chanting the vibration of the holy name. Text 222. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu went back to perform kirtan, and the Kazi, his mind jubilant, went with him. Text 225. The Lord asked the Kazi to go back home. Then the son of Mother Shachi came back to his own home, dancing and dancing. Text 226. This is the incident concerning the Kazi and the Lord's mercy upon him. Anyone who hears this is also freed from all offenses. Can I read that again? I got the permission from Abai to read it again. This is the incident concerning the Kazi and the Lord's mercy upon him. Anyone who hears this is also freed from all offenses. We should hear this every day, no? 227. One day, the two brothers, Lord Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, were dancing in the holy house of Srivas Thakur. 228. At that time, a calamity took place. Srivas Thakur's son died. Yet Srivas Thakur was not at all sorry. Text 229. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu caused the dead son to speak about knowledge, and then the two brothers personally became the sons of Srivas Thakur. Purport. This incident is described as follows by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Amrita Pravaha Bhasha. One night, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing with his devotees at the house of Srivas Thakur, one of Srivas Thakur's sons, who was suffering from some disease, died. Srivas Thakur was so patient, however, that he did not allow anyone to express sorrow by crying, for he did not want the kirtan going on at his house to be disturbed. Thus kirtan continued without a sound of lamentation. But when the kirtan was over, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who could understand the incident, declared, "There must have been some calamity in this house." When he was then informed about the death of Srivas Thakur's son, he expressed his regret, saying, "Why was this news not given to me before?" He went to the place where the son was lying dead and asked him, "My dear boy, why are you leaving the house of Srivas Thakur?" The dead son immediately replied, "I was living in this house as long as I was destined to live here. Now that the time is over, I am going elsewhere, according to your direction. I am your eternal servant, a dependent living being. I must act only according to your desire. Beyond your desire, I cannot do anything. I have no such power." Hearing these words of the dead son, all the members of Srivas Thakur's family received transcendental knowledge. Thus there was no cause for lamentation. This transcendental knowledge is described in the Bhagavad Gita 2.13. Tatha dihantara praptir didas tatra namuyati. When someone dies, he accepts another body. Therefore sober persons do not lament. After the discourse between the dead boy and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, funeral ceremonies were performed, and Lord Chaitanya assured Srivas Thakur, "You have lost one son, but Nityananda Prabhu and I are your eternal sons. We shall never be able to give up your company." This is an instance of a transcendental relationship with Krishna. We have eternal transcendental relationships with Krishna as his servants, friends, fathers, sons, or conjugal lovers. When the same relationships are pervertedly reflected in this material world, we have relationships as the sons, fathers, friends, lovers, masters, or servants of others. But all these relationships are subject to termination within a definite period. If we revive our relationship with Krishna, however, by the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, our eternal relationship will never break to cause our lamentation. Text 230. Thereafter, the Lord charitably bestowed his benediction upon all devotees. He gave the remnants of his food to Narayani, showing her special respect. Purport. Narayani was a niece of Srivas Thakur, and later she became the mother of Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. In this connection, the Sahajas cite a malicious story that after eating the remnants of Lord Chaitanya's food, Narayani became pregnant and gave birth to Vrindavan Das Thakur. The rascal Sahajas may manufacture such false statements, but no one should believe them because they are motivated by enmity against the Vaishnavas. Text 231. There was a tailor who was a meat eater but was sewing garments for Srivas Thakur. The Lord, being merciful to him, showed him his own form. Text 232. Saying, I have seen, and dancing in ecstatic love as though mad, he became a first-class Vaishnava. Purport. There was a Muslim tailor near the house of Srivas Thakur who used to sew the garments of the family. One day he was very pleased with the dancing of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Indeed, he was enchanted. The Lord, understanding his attitude, showed him his original form as Krishna. The tailor then began to dance, saying, "I have seen, I have seen." He became absorbed in ecstatic love and began to dance with Lord Chaitanya. Thus he became one of the foremost Vaishnava adherents to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Text 233. In ecstasy, the Lord asked Srivas Thakur to deliver his flute. But Srivas Thakur replied, "Your flute has been stolen away by the gopis." 234. Hearing this reply, the Lord said in ecstasy, "Go on talking, go on talking." Thus Srivas described the transcendental mellows of the pastimes of Sri Vrindavan. Text 235. In the beginning, Srivas Thakur described the transcendental sweetness of Vrindavan's pastimes. Hearing this, the Lord felt great and increasing jubilation in his heart. Text 236. Therefore the Lord again and again asked him, "Speak on, speak on." Thus Srivas again and again described the pastimes of Vrindavan, vividly expanding them. Text 237. Srivas Thakur extensively explained how the gopis were attracted to the forests of Vrindavan by the vibration of Krishna's flute, and how they wandered together in the forest. Srivas Pandit narrated all the pastimes enacted during the 6 changing seasons. He described the drinking of honey, the celebration of the rasa dance, the swimming in the Yamuna, and other such incidents. Text 239. When the Lord, hearing with great pleasure, said, "Go on speaking, go on speaking," Srivas Thakur described the rasa dance, the Ädi-lilä dance, which is filled with transcendental mellows. 240. As the Lord thus requested and Srivas Thakur spoke, the morning appeared, and the Lord embraced Srivas Thakur and satisfied him. 241. Thereafter, a dramatization of Krishna's pastimes was performed in the house of Sri Chandrasekhar Acharya. The Lord personally took the part of Rukmini, the foremost of Krishna's queens. 242. The Lord sometimes took the part of goddess Durga, Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, or the chief potency, Yogamaya. Sitting on a cot, he delivered love of Godhead to all the devotees present. Text 243. One day when Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu had finished his dancing, a woman, the wife of a Brahmana, came there and caught hold of his lotus feet. 214. As she took the dust of his lotus feet again and again, the Lord became unlimitedly unhappy. Purport. This holding of a great personality's lotus feet is certainly very good for the person who takes the dust, but this example of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's unhappiness indicates that a Vaishnava should not allow anyone to take dust from his feet. One who takes the dust of a great personality's lotus feet transfers his sinful activities to that great personality. Unless the person whose dust is taken is very strong, he must suffer the sinful activities of the person who takes the dust. Therefore, ordinarily, it should not be allowed. Sometimes in big meetings, people come to take the same advantage by touching our feet. On account of this, sometimes we have to suffer from some disease. As far as possible, no outsider should be allowed to touch one's feet to take dust from them. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu personally showed this by his example, as explained in the next verse. Text 245. Immediately, he ran to the river Ganges and jumped in to counteract the sinful activities of that woman. Lord Nityananda and Haridas Thakur caught him and raised him from the river. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is God himself, but he was playing the part of a preacher. Every preacher should know that being allowed to touch a Vaishnava's feet and take dust may be good for the person who takes it, but it is not good for the person who allows it to be taken. As far as possible, this practice should ordinarily be avoided. Only initiated disciples should be allowed to take this advantage, not others. Those who are full of sinful activities should generally be avoided. Text 246. That night, the Lord stayed at the house of Vijay Acharya. In the morning, the Lord took all his devotees and returned home. Text 247. One day the Lord, in the ecstasy of the gopis, was sitting in his house, very morose in separation. He was calling, Gopi, Gopi. Text 248. A student who came to see the Lord was astonished that the Lord was chanting, Gopi, Gopi. Thus he spoke as follows. Why are you chanting the names Gopi, Gopi, instead of the holy name of Lord Krishna, which is so glorious? What pious result will you achieve by such chanting? Purport. It is said, Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra, Vigyeya Nabhujaya. No one can understand the activities of a pure devotee. A student or neophyte devotee could not possibly understand why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was chanting the name of the gopis, nor should the student have asked the Lord about the potency of chanting Gopi, Gopi. The neophyte student was certainly convinced of the piety in the chanting of Krishna's holy name, but this sort of attitude is also offensive. Dharma vrata tyaga hutadi sarva shubha kriya samyam api pramadaha. To chant the holy name of Krishna in exchange for the achievement of piety is an offense. This, of course, was unknown to the student. Thus he innocently asked, what piety is there in chanting of the name Gopi? He did not know that there is no question of piety or impiety. The chanting of the holy name of Krishna or the holy name Gopi is on the transcendental platform of loving affairs. Since he was not expert in understanding such transcendental activities, his question was merely impudent. Thus Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, apparently greatly angry at him, reacted as follows. Text 250. Hearing the foolish student, the Lord became greatly angry and rebuked Lord Krishna in various ways. Taking up a stick, he rose to strike the student. Purport. It is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam that when Uddhava came from Lord Krishna with a message for the gopis, all the gopis, especially Srimati Radharani, denounced Krishna in various ways. Such denunciations, however, reflect an exuberant, loving attitude that an ordinary man cannot understand. When the foolish student questioned Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Chaitanya similarly rebuked Lord Krishna in loving exuberance. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in the mood of the gopis, and the student advocated the cause of Sri Krishna, Lord Chaitanya was greatly angry. Seeing his anger, the foolish student, who was an ordinary atheistic Smarta Brahmana, foolishly misjudged him. Thus, he and a party of students were ready to strike the Lord in retaliation. After this incident, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided to take sannyas so that people would not commit offenses against him, considering him an ordinary householder. For in India, even now a sannyasi is naturally offered respect. 251. The student ran away in fear, and the Lord followed him. But somehow or other, the devotees checked the Lord. 252. The devotees pacified the Lord and brought him home, and the student ran away to an assembly of other students. The Brahmana student ran to a place where 1,000 students were studying together. There, he described the incident to them. Purport. In this verse we find the word dvija, indicating that the student was a Brahmana. Actually, in those days, only members of the Brahmana class became students of Vedic literatures. Schooling is meant especially for Brahmanas. Previously, there was no question of schooling for Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, or Shudras. Kshatriyas used to learn the technology of warfare, and Vaishyas learned business from their fathers or other businessmen. They were not meant to study the Vedas. At present, however, everyone goes to school and everyone is given the same type of education, although no one knows what the result will be. The result, however, is most unsatisfactory, as we have seen in the Western countries especially. The United States has vast educational institutions where everyone is allowed to receive an education, but the result is that most students become like hippies. Higher education is not meant for everyone. Only selected individuals trained in Brahminical culture should be allowed to pursue a higher education. Educational institutions should not aim to teach technology, for a technologist cannot properly be called educated. A technologist is a Shudra. Only one who studies the Vedas may properly be called a learned man, Pandit. The duty of a Brahmana is to become learned in the Vedic literature and teach the Vedic knowledge to other Brahmanas. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we are simply teaching our students to become fit Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. In our school at Dallas, the students are learning English and Sanskrit, and through these two languages, they are studying all our books, such as Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita as it is, the Nectar of Devotion. It is a mistake to educate every student as a technologist. There must be a group of students who become Brahmanas. Without Brahmanas who study the Vedic literature, human society will be entirely chaotic. That was a long time ago, 1975, 45 years ago. And just see how chaotic it's become. Text 254. Hearing of the incident, all the students became greatly angry and joined together in criticizing the Lord. 255. Nimai Pandit alone has spoiled the entire country, they accused. He wants to strike a caste Brahmana. He has no fear of religious principles. Purport. In those days also, the caste Brahmanas were very proud. They were not prepared to accept chastisement, even from a teacher or spiritual master. 256. If he again performs such an atrocious act, certainly we shall retaliate and strike him in return. What kind of important person is he that he can check us in this way? 257. When all the students thus resolved, criticizing Sri Caitanya Mahäprabhu, their intelligence was spoiled. Thus, although they were learned scholars, because of this offense, the essence of knowledge was not manifested in them. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said, Mayaya parita jnana asuram bhavam ashritaha. When one becomes inimical to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, adopting an atheistic attitude, asuram bhavam, even if one is a learned scholar, the essence of knowledge does not become manifested in him. In other words, the essence of his knowledge is stolen by the illusory energy of the Lord. In this connection, Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur quotes a mantra from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.23. Yasya Devi Parab Bhaktir Yatha Devi Tata Garo Tasyaite Caitanya-caritämrta Prakashante Mahatmanaha. The purport of this verse is that one who is unflinchingly devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, and similarly devoted to the spiritual master, with no ulterior motive, becomes a master of all knowledge. In the heart of such a devotee, the real essence of the Vedic knowledge becomes manifested. This essence is nothing but surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vidaishta Sarvar. This essence is nothing but surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vidaishta Sarvyar aham eva vedyaha. Only one who fully surrenders to the spiritual master and the Supreme Lord does the essence of Vedic knowledge become manifested, not to anyone else. This same principle is emphasized by Sri Prahlad Maharaj in Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.24. Iti pungsar pita bishnau bhaktish chen navalakshana kriyate bhagavat jatha tanmanye dita mutamam. A person who directly applies these 9 principles, hearing, chanting, remembering, etc., in the service of the Lord, is to be understood as a greatly learned man, who has assimilated the Vedic literatures very well. For the goal of studying the Vedic literature is to understand the supremacy of Lord Sri Krishna. Sridhar Swami confirms in his commentary that first one must surrender to the spiritual master. Then the process of devotional service will develop. It is not a fact that only one who diligently pursues an academic career can become a devotee. Even with no academic career, if one has full faith in the Master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he develops in spiritual life and real knowledge of the Vedas. The example of Maharaj Katvanga confirms this. One who surrenders is understood to have learned the subject matter of the Vedas very nicely. One who adopts this Vedic process of surrender learns devotional service and is certainly successful. One who is very proud, however, is unable to surrender either to the spiritual master or to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus he cannot understand the essence of any Vedic literature. Srimad Bhagavatam 11.18 declares, Shabda Brahmani Nishnato Na Nishnayat Pade Yadi Shamas Shamak Palo Yadenum Iva Rakshataha. If one is learned in the Vedic literature but is not a devotee of Lord Vishnu, his work is a useless waste of labor, just like keeping a cow that does not give milk. Anyone who does not follow the surrendering process, but is simply interested in an academic career, cannot make any advancement. His profit is only his labor for nothing. If one is expert in the study of the Vedas, but does not surrender to a spiritual master or Vishnu, all his cultivation of knowledge is but a waste of time and labor. 258. But the proud student community did not become submissive. On the contrary, the students spoke of the incident anywhere and everywhere. in a laughing manner, they criticized the Lord. 259. There's a nice pastime that explains this apparent amazing thing that anyone could criticize Lord Chaitanya. Once Nityananda Prabhu took Jiva Goswami around parikrama of Gaur-mandala parikrama, the whole Navadvip area, Nadia. And he was explaining the glories of all these places. If you just touch your foot here, you become pure, you become liberated, you lie down here, sleep. It's like, doing Dandavat Parikrama around Govardhan Hill. So many things he was saying. And at the end of the Parikrama, Jiva Goswami asked him this question: "My dear Lord, I couldn't help but notice that despite all the things you told me, I saw different persons committing sinful activities, different kinds of sinful activities. How is this possible?" And then Lord Nityananda answered this way. He said, yes, if a person develops too much faith in the power of his own intelligence, he is empowered to reject the most powerful thing, the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So here we see these students who were smarta, brahmanas, very proud of their birth, very proud of their own intelligence. They rejected Lord Chaitanya. Such a lesson to all of us. Never be proud of your own intelligence. No matter how intelligent we are only a little tiny speck in the universe. Text 259. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being omniscient, could understand the degradation of these students. Thus he sat at home, contemplating how to rescue them. Text 260. All these so-called professors and scientists and their students generally follow the regulative principles of religion, fruitive activities, and austerities, the Lord thought. Yet at the same time, they are blasphemers and rogues. Purport. Here is a depiction of materialists who have no knowledge of devotional service. They may be very religious and may work very systematically or perform austerities and penances, but if they blaspheme the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are nothing but rogues. This is confirmed in the Hari Bhakti Sududaya 3.11. Bhagavad Bhakti Hinasya Jatik Shastram Japastapaha Apranasyaiva Deyasya Mandanam Lokaranjanam. If they are without knowledge of devotional service to the Lord, then great nationalism, fruitive, political, or social work, science or philosophy, are all simply like costly garments decorating a dead body. The only offense of persons adhering to these principles is that they are not devotees. They are always blasphemous toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His devotees. 261. If I do not induce them to take to devotional service because of committing the offense of blasphemy, none of these people will be able to take to it. 262. I have come to deliver all fallen souls, but now just the opposite has happened. How can these rogues be delivered? How may they be benefited? If these rogues offer me obeisances, the reactions of their sinful activities will be nullified. Then, if I induce them, they will take to devotional service. 264. I must certainly deliver all these fallen souls who blaspheme me and do not offer me obeisances. 265. I shall accept the sannyas order of life, for thus people will offer me their obeisances, thinking of me as a member of the renounced order. Purport. Among the members of the Varnashram institution's social orders, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, the Brahmana is considered the foremost, for he is the teacher and spiritual master of all the other Varnas. Similarly, among the spiritual orders, Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas, the Sannyas order is the most elevated. Therefore, a sannyasi is the spiritual master of all the Varnas and ashramas, and a Brahmana is also expected to offer obeisances to a sannyasi. Unfortunately, however, caste Brahmanas do not offer obeisances to a Vaishnava sannyasi. They are so proud that they do not offer obeisances even to Indian sannyasis. What to speak of European and American sannyasis? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, expected that even the caste Brahmanas would offer respectful obeisances to a sannyasi, because 500 years ago the social custom was to offer obeisances immediately to any sannyasi, known or unknown. The sannyasis of the Krishna consciousness movement are bona fide. All the students of the Krishna consciousness movement have undergone the regular process of initiation, as enjoined in the Hari Bhakti Vilas by Sanatan Goswami. Tata Diksha Vidanena Dvijat Tvam Jayate Nrinam. By the regular process of initiation, any man can become a Brahmana. Thus, in the beginning, the students of our Krishna consciousness movement agreed to live with devotees, and gradually, having given up 4 prohibited activities, illicit sex, gambling, meat eating, and intoxication, they become advanced in the activities of spiritual life. When one is found to be regularly following these principles, he is given the first initiation, Harinama, and he regularly chants at least 16 rounds a day. Then, after 6 months or a year, he is initiated for the second time and given the sacred thread with the regular sacrifice and rituals. After some time, when he advances still further and is willing to give up this material world, he is given the sannyas order. At that time he receives the title Swami or Goswami, both of which mean master of the senses. Unfortunately, debauched so-called Brahmanas in India neither offer them respect nor accept them as bona fide sannyasis. To such Vaishnava sannyasis, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expected the so-called Brahmanas to offer respect to such Vaishnava sannyasis. Nevertheless, it does not matter whether they offer respect nor whether they accept these sannyasis as bona fide, for the Shastras describes punishment for such disobedient so-called Brahmanas. The Shastra conjunction declares, Devata pratiman drishtva yatim chaiva tridandinam namaskaram nakuryad yat prayaschittaya naraha. Prayaschittaya te naraha. One who does not offer respect to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to his deity in the temple, or to a Tridandi sannyasi, must undergo prayaschitta, atonement. If one does not offer obeisances to such a sannyasi, the prescribed prayaschitta is to fast for 1 day. Text 266. Offering obeisances will relieve them of all the reactions to their offenses. Then, by my grace, devotional service, bhakti, will awaken in their pure hearts. Purport. According to the Vedic injunctions, only a Brahmana may be offered sannyas. The Shankar Sampradaya Ekadanda Sannyasa Sampradaya awards the sannyas order only to caste brahmanas or born brahmanas. But in the Vaishnava system, even one not born in a brahmana family may be made a brahmana according to the direction of the Hari Bhakti Vilas. Tata Diksha Vidhanena Vijat Dvijatvam Jayate Nrinam. Any person from any part of the world may be made a brahmana by the regular process of initiation, and when he follows Brahminical behavior, observing the principles of abstaining from intoxication, illicit sex, meat eating, and gambling, he may be offered sannyas. All the sannyasis in the Krishna consciousness movement who are preaching all over the world are regular Brahmana sannyasis. Thus the so-called caste brahmanas should not object to offering them respectful obeisances. By offering such obeisances, as recommended by Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, they will diminish their offenses and automatically awaken to their natural position of devotional service. As it is said, Nityasiddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi. Krishna Prema can be awakened in a purified heart. The more we offer obeisances to sannyasis, especially Vaishnava sannyasis, the more we diminish our offenses and purify our hearts. Only in a purified heart can Krishna Prema awaken. This is the process of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's cult, the Krishna consciousness movement. Text 67. All the unfaithful rogues of this world can be delivered by this process. There is no alternative. This is the essence of the argument. $268. After coming to this firm conclusion, the Lord continued to stay at home. In the meantime, Keshava Bharati came to the town of Nadia. And we'll stop there for tonight. 269. How many verses do we have in this chapter? Oh yeah, we still have plenty. Okay. So that's it for tonight. Pastimes, the youthful pastimes of Chaitanya were almost ended, and now he's going to take sannyas. All right, time for our open mic reflection period. Open mic means anyone can speak into their keyboards or their devices and reflect upon the Lord's pastimes, and we will relish. Okay. I saw you fiddling with the phone with something.
I was searching, not yet.
Huh?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, something now. From Bhakta Ellis.
Bhakta
Ellis.
Ellis. Hare Krishna, Bhakta Ellis. Haribol.
Excuse me. I think he's typing more. But he says, Dear Maharaj, I would like to begin by offering you my obeisances, and thereby also purify my heart.
Well, thank you for that. Somehow or other I've come to this position of a sannyasi, and it's hard, actually. It's hard to receive service or receive obeisances, to receive devotion as a service. It's the most difficult thing to do. It may look easy from outside, but it's very difficult to receive service as a service and not become, proud or puffed up or whatever. By your mercy, I pray that I may achieve that position of humility.
Something from Rati Manjari.
Hare Krishna, Rati.
She says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. If I may ask a question outside of tonight's reading.
Okay.
She must still be typing also. Bhakta Ellis's question came in.
Okay, good.
I'll read that. In regards to Lord Chaitanya chanting...
This is Bhakta Ellis?
Yes.
Okay.
In regards to Lord Chaitanya chanting Gopi Gopi, are the names of the Lord's devotees also non-different from them, in the same way that the Lord's name is non-different from him?
The answer is yes. This must be a doozy. Rati's writing a little. Whenever she says it's going to be outside of the reading, you know it's going to be a doozy. We've come to expect it. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Okay, Rati's question came in.
Okay, Rati, go ahead.
She says, I have heard that pious people understand that by touching the feet of an exalted saintly person, they can get rid of their sinful reactions. But I have also heard that as devotees we should be careful not to touch another's feet. How should we understand these two statements? Because when we touch another person's feet, we get their karma.
No, when you touch another person's feet, you give them your karma. That's how you understand it. Therefore, it was this is within the reading. You may have come in late, but I don't know whether you came in late or not, but this was the whole point of Lord Chaitanya's description. When this lady came to grab his feet and take the dust from his feet, and he became very disturbed because he's setting an example. Lord Chaitanya came to teach us how to perform devotional service perfectly in all walks of life, in all the different. He went through all the different ashrams and not through all the different varnas, but through all the ashrams. And yes, he said, right in the verse, he said we should not allow. Prabhupada explains in the purports also that we should not allow people who are sinful to touch our feet, because we will take their reactions. And if we're not strong enough, and this is the point, if we're not strong enough, then we may, when we try to take on those reactions, if we're not strong enough, then it can affect us. Prabhupada mentions that one time someone was coming to take his feet, touch his feet, or sometimes people come to touch his feet, and he avoids it because when it happens, he sometimes has to have some disease, or one time he said that he may have to have a bad dream or something like that. But he was very, very powerful. But if you, Rupa Goswami also says you shouldn't take initiation, you shouldn't give initiation to too many disciples, because if you do, when you absorb their sinful reactions, you may fall down. You may get overwhelmed by especially when people have thousands and thousands of disciples. Therefore, persons who do that should be given all respect, because if they can do that successfully, they deliver so many people. But if a person tries to do that out of pride or out of a desire for followers, or for some other subtle reason or gross reason for sense gratification, then they become overwhelmed by the burden and fall down. So what's the benefit of that? There's no benefit. But he says also that persons who are initiated may be given the permission to touch your feet, because their activities are pure. If they're following the regulated principles and initiated and are chanting Hare Krishna according to the directions of the spiritual master, then they're purified. Then it becomes a pure act of devotion for the other person. Anyway, that's the way I understand it. That's the way I just heard it.
Rati says that she came in late, and thank you. And she says, is it true that when a person touches your feet and then gives you their karma, but then you touch their head, you neutralize this and give it back to them?
Yeah, Prabhupada told us that. He did tell us that. He said if somebody did that by mistake, just touch their head and it goes right. I don't know if he was just saying that or whether it's an absolute truth. I don't know that exactly, but he did say it, definitely.
Next is from Vrajaloka.
Hare Krishna Vrajaloka.
She says, Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj.
Hari Bol.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to you. We often hear various blessings in the scriptures at the end of the stories, as we have read here after the story of the Kazi. How exactly should these blessings be understood to be taken literally? If we don't feel these blessings on ourselves, does that mean we don't hear the pastimes properly?
It's partly that, or it's that we're not seriously enough following, like when Jagai and Madai, when Lord Chaitanya agreed to accept them, then he made them promise not to do it again. So, we're conditioned souls. We've been in this material world for hundreds and thousands of births, or who knows how many births. And it's very deeply ingrained in us, the desire for sense gratification. And aside from that, even if we are pure, in this material world, especially in the Kali Yuga, where we're surrounded by so much sense gratification and so many temptations and so much confusion and pain and suffering and difficulties, then we may not be of the world when we're devotees, but we are in the world at the same time. And so therefore, all the reactions, if it's going on in the world, we have to share in them. Not literally, if we're purified and not committing sinful activities ourselves, but still we have to come in contact with those things, with the atmosphere, with people who are doing those things. And therefore, we may not feel the effects of these individual blessings from hearing this particular pastime or that particular pastime. But it also depends on the degree of our purity, our own purity. And, if we hear and relish and continue to hear and relish and behave ourselves internally and externally, then yes, these things are to be taken literally. And even if you don't immediately perceive them, they will be perceived gradually as we become more and more qualified by performing and purified by performing devotional service. This part of the lesson is in this story of these students who were criticizing Lord Chaitanya. They were pure in the sense that they were born in Brahmana families, and they did all the rituals, smarta brahmanas, but they were proud. Even persons in the mode of goodness, they become conditioned by pride, by a sense of knowledge, and by a sense of superiority, because they are superior, in a sense, in the modes of nature. So even if a person isn't quote-unquote sinful, in this case the Brahmanas were following all kinds of principles and they were knowledgeable. It was acknowledged in the verses that they were scholars, but because they didn't give proper respect to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they weren't pure devotees, then they fell down. They couldn't understand why Lord Chaitanya would be glorifying the names of the eternal associates of Krishna in the spiritual world. So, in other words, to approach the Supreme Pure, we have to be pure to get the full benefit, to get the full result. But even if we're not completely pure, we don't have the full benefit. There's that famous verse, Nama parada yuktanam namam evya agamyaham, that the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, and that means also the performance of devotional service, but particularly the chanting of the holy names, are for offenders. Because if they continue to chant, the holy name is so powerful that it relieves us of the offenses. And there's actually no other thing that is powerful enough to relieve us from namaparads. Therefore, the persons who's offensive, they're recommended to chant constantly. And if they do that, then the holy name will again bestow its mercy, His mercy, and we will become supremely pure. Hare Krishna.
It's from Gopakanya Devi Dasi.
Hare Krishna Gopakanya.
Says, it reminds me about Bhakti Siddhanta Swami Maharaj, Gurudev of Srila Prabhupada, who had surrender at Gurudev Sri Gaurakishora Das Babaji Maharaj, who was materially illiterate but had all faith in Krishna, full faith in Sadhu, Shastra, and Guru. Though being the most learned scholar of that time. Amazing is this surrendering process.
Yeah. This was the mercy of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his father, because his father saw that he was a very learned person, and he was getting all kinds of praise and accolades and, special honorific titles and everything. So he wanted to make sure that he stayed humble. So he had him go to Gorkashore Das Babaji. Of course, Gorkashore Das Babaji, he wasn't just a pious person, he was a liberated soul. He was completely liberated. But yes, it's true, he wasn't a vastly learned person, he wasn't scholarly, and he couldn't sign his name even. He had to, in India, poor people can't sign their name, they put their thumbprint. That's how they sign things. But yes, it was to, and he, at first he wouldn't initiate him. If you remember, he said, no, you're a great learned scholar, I'm a very elevated family, I'm just a nobody. But everybody knew that he was a Siddha-baba, he was a perfected being. So then he said, come back. And then he came back again and he said, I'll have to ask Lord Chaitanya. And then he went away, came back, and Gorkashore Das Babaji says, oh, I forgot to ask him. Like this, he kept going back and forth, and finally his father said, don't come back into this house until you have convinced Gorkashore Das Babaji Maharaj to initiate you. So in this way, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was prepared to commit suicide. I mean, I heard a story, I don't know if it's exactly true, but he met him on a bridge, and when he said these things, no, I can this, and that, give all these excuses, he said, that's it, I'm jumping off the bridge unless you take me, you have to take me, or else I'm finishing my life. He at least had that sentiment. And then he agreed, and he was his only disciple. Hare Krishna.
This is from Naresh Yadav.
Hey, Naresh Yadav, Haribol.
He says, in India this is also a tradition of touching feet when we see elderly person visiting home to give him respect and take blessing from him or her. Maharaj, please reflect on this with today's touching feet of a Vaishnava, your humble servant.
Well, I think I already, this is a ritual. It has become a ritual. Originally, it's based on the spiritual principles, but over time, when the knowledge of what we're doing becomes forgotten, then it becomes just a ritual. And that doesn't have the same effect. We can't compare devotional service, the activities of devotional service, of which paying obeisances is one, to a ritual activity. I know, because I'm a sannyasi, so when I'm in India, many times people come and they beg blessings. Oh, please bless me, please bless me. And they're all thinking about themselves. They just want to take. They want to take. And that's because it's become habitual. It's become a tradition. It doesn't have the same potency. There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita that describes that better than giving up one's possessions, it's better to do what we do in devotional service with knowledge. Udarat sama evaite jnani twat maiva me matam astitat sahiyuktat ma meva nutamam gatim. All of these persons, Krishna is describing the persons who approach him in some way. They're either in need of money, or they are suffering, trying to get rid of suffering, or they're inquisitive, or they're searching for the truth. And he says of all of these, they're all magnanimous souls. But those who are in knowledge of me, they are very dear to me, and I'm very dear to them. So they're considered to be more elevated, those who do what they're doing in knowledge. Rupa Goswami describes niyamagraha, the principle of niyamagraha, means if you do your Vaishnava activities just for doing them, not for the goal of love of God, but just to get something for yourself, to purify yourself or whatever. Or if you neglect them, both of those, the regulations, they're both cause of fall down, niyamagraha. So that's the essence of what your question is, that if it's just a formality, nowadays in India they don't even reach down and touch their feet. They just kind of bend down and put their hand on the person toward the knee. They don't even actually, because it's just a ritual. It doesn't really mean anything. They're not doing it for the right reason, for the right purpose. In order to go forward, we have to know what we're doing. In order to actually love Krishna, we have to know Krishna. This is not knowledge for knowledge's sake. It's knowledge for wanting to know how to behave with Krishna in love, in loving relationship. The goal is Nityasita Krishna Prema Sabhya Kapinoi, where the love of Krishna is there in the heart of everyone, even those students. But it becomes covered by misbehavior, by force of habit, a degraded culture, the caste conception. All these things, if done mechanically, socially, out of tradition, and just because our parents do it, we do it, and it's passed on like that, it has no benefit, practically. And if the persons who are sinful are touching the feet of people who are sinful, then there's nothing that happens really auspicious. Of course, you could say that somebody is exhibiting a humble or attitude, or is being respectful to a superior. That's good. Krishna says in the Gita to austerity of the body is to offer obeisances to mother and father, spiritual master, the Supreme Lord. It's not bad to do that, but we don't get the full benefit unless we know what we're doing. Hare Krishna.
Rati says, thank you very much for being so wise. To know that we can ask you questions on almost anything day after day and get sound answers gives a practical experience of spiritual shelter.
Rati, I'm just a peon. I'm a humble peon. I'm just delivering the letters, that's all. Trying to remember what I hear from Srila Prabhupada and passing it on. I get no credit. Credit goes to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
And Vrajaloka says, thank you so much for this beautiful explanation.
Hare Krishna. Okay, we're coming down to the wire. It's 8:25. I think I'll stop there. All glories to the assembled devotees. Samabeda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Sri Caitanya-caritämrta ki jai. The lotus feet of Sri Caitanya Mahäprabhu ki jai. The example of Lord Chaitanya's pure devotional service ki jai. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. We'll see you tomorrow night, same time, same place, right here in the Haven, Hythe, Kent, Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow. Haribol.